Welcome back. It is Monday, February 27th. Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Don Fischer joining us, brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Don, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Can't complain at all.
It's, I think, not a good weekend. You got to call a win over Purdue at West Lafayette, which I bet you thought would never come again.
Well, for 10 years it didn't. It was way too long, to say the least. But Indiana sweeping Purdue for the first time in 10 years and winning at Mackey Arena makes this team special in my mind, without question, because it just hasn't happened. And right now, this team still has everything right in their hands. They have a chance to get a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. They're going to go in the NCAA tournament without question. Everybody knows that at this point. So you're no longer doubting those kinds of things. They've won 20 games in a regular season for the first time in 6 or 7 years now. There are so many good things with this ball club right now at this juncture, and you got to be excited about it if you're an Indiana fan.
Yeah, Don, even though it looked like it was really getting kind of up and down for them, I think that the future is bright, because I think that this win, that they ride this, they've got 2 home games to finish the season, of which I expect them to win. They're going to be expected to win. And if that is the case, you go into the Big Ten tournament, they would have the double bye by then, I think, because they've got the tiebreaker over Michigan, which has made a hell of a run to get up into the playoff talks. But I just think that it's ending a little bit better than it looked like it was going to, and I think that's going to propel them into the postseason on a very good note.
Well, I think that's true, except this week is really critical. You cannot look past Iowa. You cannot look past Michigan. Both these teams are playing some of their best basketball. The Hawkeyes, as everybody knows, beat Indiana in the first restart of the Big Ten back in January, and knocked Indiana off after Indiana got up to a big lead in the first half. By halftime, it had dwindled down quite a bit, and of course, that's when Race Thompson was hurt in the last 5 minutes of that ball game. And then Iowa ended up winning that contest a little bit controversially, as we know, with Fran McCaffrey's walk down to the Indiana huddle and getting a technical foul that was rescinded, which has never happened in the history of any basketball that I can remember, high school, college, junior high, whatever the case may be, a rescinded technical foul. But that all said, Iowa is really playing good basketball, and what they did with Michigan State on Saturday was absolutely incredible. So you cannot take them lightly. And then Michigan, with their comeback win yesterday in overtime, there's another team playing their best basketball this season. So Indiana's got 2 games this week that are going to be, in my opinion, crucial to how they finish this season.
I know you didn't see Fran's latest actions because you're not on social media at Smartly, but in a game, I think it was yesterday, he goes over to stare down an official, literally stood 5. You saw it?
I saw the highlight of it. Yes.
I've never seen a more childish thing I'm like, what are you kidding? Was he 6? I'm like, wow. He always finds new ways to look more immature, I guess. But
here's my question. Why wasn't he teed up for that? I mean,
exactly.
You want to stare me down? Bing.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. It's nuts. Getting back to the Purdue game first, though, Jalen Hood-Schifino, I know that it was 1 point shy of Eric Gordon's scoring record, but this has to be the greatest performance by a freshman in Indiana history because of where this took place, what's on the line, who it's against, all of that. What an incredible performance by this kid. He took the team on his shoulders because of the way Purdue was defending Indiana. They couldn't go to Trace a lot. And man, I've never seen a performance by an Indiana freshman like that personally.
It was phenomenal. There's no question about it. He literally carried the load in the first half of this ball game with his 23 points. And Indiana, of course, at halftime was down 4. It's just a tremendous performance by the young man. And then he continued to play terrifically in the second half as well. It's not like it was just a one-half performance. In fact, if you look at this game, the astonishing thing about it is Indiana got almost nothing from their bench. They had 2 points from the bench total. I think they had 3 rebounds total. And Malik Renew was responsible for all of those. Nobody else did anything in that regard. Tamar Bates actually played some pretty good defense, I thought, when he was on the floor against their guards. But Jordan Geronimo and Malik both got into foul trouble. And Caleb Banks, of course, played very sparingly in this ball game. But honestly, the bench gave him nothing in this ball game other than the few minutes that Tamar gave him defensively. And to win this ball game against that team in their facility, against that crowd, and it was spectacular in that regard as well. This is just a phenomenal win for Indiana basketball.
There's a great acronym. 5 less puts up. JHS stands for just hit shots. He certainly did that.
Yeah.
And John putting out Trey Galloway, a huge part of that as well. I mean, Indiana, Jalen had 35 points and an unbelievable performance, but it was still a team win. Indiana stayed in it from a team perspective, especially Trace Jackson Davis. You would think that if you're in the locker room with 10 points, a guy like that you're just going to be all down and this and that. He didn't. He kept his head up. He stayed in the game. As a matter of fact, he comes out and he has 6 points quickly in that second half. I think he had 6 points in the first 4 minutes of the second half, which helped propel Indiana into this start that kept him going.
Well, and the other thing that he did too, which he's been doing well most of the year, as you can tell from the statistics, he fed everybody else off those double teams. He got people involved. He had 7 assists in this ball game. I think he's trailing Hood Schifino as the assist leader on this Indiana basketball team. Like 4 assists is all he needs to tie Hood Schifino. So this guy is the shot block career leader, and obviously the leader in this ball club in that regard. He's the leading rebounder, he's the leading scorer, and he could become the leading assist man if he continues on this torrid pace that he's had this year with assists. So Trace has done just about everything you could ask of him, and even in a ball game that he was not spectacular in from a scoring or rebounding standpoint, he was special.
And I think, Don, what stood out to me most about this game was when you watched the first half of that game, I thought Purdue played very well. I thought they played a great for Indiana to only be down 4. I sent a couple text messages out. I said, watch out, because Purdue just played really well and Indiana's only down 4 points. I mean, this team has struggled on the road at times. We've like a broken record. We talked about their toughness at times. For them to come out then in the second half, and they did not bat an eye. They were not intimidated by the scenario. They were not intimidated by that environment. I was thoroughly impressed because you had Miller Kopp step up, hit shots. Trey Galloway hit shots. Jalen Hood-Schifino, we just talked about, a freshman making plays. I think if you would have given Matt Painter the stat line that Trace Jackson Davis had, he would have said, we just won that game by 15 points. But because Indiana's got so many guys now that are feeling comfortable in their role, and that's really what I think a lot of people have wanted to see. These guys have accepted their role, and I don't want to say they're peaking at the right time, but they are playing their best basketball at the most important time of the year.
Well, and here's the other thing. Think about this. I mean, IU was out rebounded in this ball game,
Good
46 to 30.
Yeah,
they were out rebounded the first half, 26-11. But they were only 1 rebound back of Purdue in the second half, 20-19. So the second half performance was incredible, just because of where you're at, who you're playing against, the atmosphere that you're dealing with. Their response in this ball game is probably as good as it's been ever, since not only through the Mike Woodson years, but even with Tom Crean's era and think of all the ball games that have been played in that last 20 years. You haven't seen a better performance by an Indiana basketball team in that kind of environment, period.
No, and that is just great to Dustin to see, because that to do it there, there is no tougher place. They're going to play the rest of the season, and that includes during the NCAA tournament. That environment was raucous. You could not hear yourself. It's like it is for opponents at Assembly Hall. So not only did they weather that storm, that shows wow. That's a wow moment for me as far as growth, because they just completely ignored and almost. I saw them pregame as they came together when the Purdue fans were all in there booing. Trace Jackson was just laughing. They were loving it, taking it in. And I think that's how they approached that whole game.
Well, yeah, actually, I'm sorry, Dustin, just to interject on that point. When they came out before the tip off, and they had their final warm up before tip off, when they came out, they got booed vehemently.
Yes.
And Nate Childress, is looking up in that student section. He's going,
I didn't see that.
And I loved it. I mean, I thought that was just tremendous and the rest of the team was pretty much doing the same thing. When they were going around in that little circle where they're going like whatever they're doing, that exercise that they're doing. And Geronimo was doing the same thing. Bring it on, boys. So
they were loving it.
Yeah,
they did not bother them.
They embraced it, and that's what you have to do when you go on the road. You embrace that atmosphere, and essentially, it's the same thing when you're at home. I mean, now you're energized by your own fans and all that kind of stuff because that's the way they deal with it, and you've got to embrace it on the road in the same vein. And it's not the same, of course, not perfect, but that's what Bob Knight always said. It's no different playing on the road than it is at home. Basket's the same height, floor is the same size. There's no difference. The difference is your mentality. How are you going to deal with it? And that's the key. And obviously, in this ball game, they handled it.
Well, and what Dale showed us that with the tape measure.
Hinkle Fieldhouse. Well, what I was going to, this kind of goes to that point. In previous years, maybe even earlier this season, I feel like there's been a hesitation at times, especially if you are when they've been in unfamiliar territory, or if they've been down, and out, not playing well. But this team does, like Mike Woodson has his team playing as confident as I've seen in a long time. There's just like nobody was hesitant really to shoot the basketball. Nobody was worried about making a mistake. I think in seasons before, they were just too focused on doing the right thing every single time down the court. And to me, Mike Woodson's like, just go play basketball. Like, do your thing. Now, if you make a mistake or do something dumb, I'm going to get on you a little bit. But you have to have that confidence. And I'm just impressed because I think that was as confident a performance we've seen from Indiana that I remember in a couple years. I might be forgetting a few games in here, but again, when you consider where they're playing, who they're playing against, to go in there and be down 4, not bat an eye, not hesitate, be willing to drive to the basket, be willing to shoot the open 3. There's just been times when it's like, pull the trigger, and they finally learned that lesson, and they were awesome on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the one thing that we haven't seen, look at Miller Kopp was driving the ball on Saturday. He drove the ball, tried to get himself open for a little jump shot or whatever the case may be, but was not hesitant to take the 3. I think there was 1 3 that he should have taken that he didn't. Other than that, I was really pleased with what he did on the floor. Trey Galloway, I've told you guys this before. Every time I see him, I go, shoot. You got to shoot. and he laughs every time. But at the same time, he did it. And in fact, I said it to him. I'm walking out to after we do our pregame open, and they're shooting at that end of the floor. And he just happened to be in the corner when I was walking past. And I tapped him on the shoulder as he was getting a shot. I'm going to take a shot. I go, shoot. He turns around. He just gives me this smile like, come on, man, I'll shoot it, that kind of thing. But
I mean, well, Don, can I tell you why you're accurate in doing that? It's because on the season for 3-point, he's shooting 51.9% from 3-point. This is not a small sample, people. This is for the season what he has shot, 52%. Miller Kopp shooting 46% from 3. They're just not getting quite enough of them. Indiana is out of the 300 and whatever 21 D1 teams, I think they're 16th from the bottom in 3-point attempts.
Exactly.
They're 16th in efficiency, but they're like it's a weird deal. But it seems to be working right now. But if they could use that a little bit more, I think that would offer a little more success.
Well, one of the reasons that they're not shooting as much as most of these other teams is because of Trace Jackson Davis. They're getting the ball inside to a guy that scores relatively easily down there most of the time. In this ball game, he was not prevalent in that regard, but that's one of the reasons. You're going to feed the guy that actually is the guy on the floor that's going to dominate from a scoring perspective, and he has certainly been that this year for Indiana. But when it's not working, you've got to find some other way to get it done. And in this particular ball game, they absolutely did that. They knocked in 7 of 15 from the 3-point line, which is a critical factor. And right now, we're all excited about this, but I'm more, and I drove home this way when I came back from West Lafayette the other night, and I went, what a great win, but man, it's only going to go down the tubes if they can't win these last 2 ball games in the regular season, because they're both at home. They're both against teams that can beat you, and you've got to give that energy and that focus and all those kinds of things going into these matchups. If you're not ready to play, you're going to have a real problem, and you're going to end up screwing up what you've just absolutely put on a pedestal out there. And you do not want to lay an egg in this situation. And obviously there is potential to do that because we've seen this happen before.